Welcome to Hercule Hub, the home of all things Hercule Poirot and classic mysteries. I'm Ronan Blackwell, your host with a passion for the little gray cells and a good cup of tisane. Today, we're diving into a brand new tale inspired by the queen of crime herself, Agatha Christie. Settle in with your favorite blanket and perhaps a spot of tea. This one's a long, relaxing journey through intrigue and deduction. It's called Death of the Diplomat in Crimson Court, a deadly Poirot story. We'll unfold it chapter by chapter, with that slow, deliberate pacing to let every clue sink in. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. London, Paris, or somewhere exotic like the Orient Express. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Introduction and Setup. The autumn of 1925 draped England in a tapestry of gold and amber, where the chill of evening carried whispers of secrets yet to be unveiled. In the heart of Sussex, nestled among rolling hills and ancient oaks, stood Crimson Court, an estate that seemed to glow with the fire of its namesake brickwork under the setting sun. Its sprawling gardens, trimmed to perfection, stretched toward a horizon punctuated by the spires of distant church towers. The manor itself was a monument to Victorian grandeur, built by a shipping magnate whose fortune had long since passed into legend. Now, it was the domain of Sir Reginald Harrington, a diplomat whose name was synonymous with tact and triumph on the international stage. Sir Reginald, at 55, cut a striking figure, tall, lean, with a mustache that rivaled the precision of a draftsman's pen. His career had woven him through the courts of Europe, from the glittering salons of Paris to the opulent palaces of Constantinople. Recently returned from Geneva, where he had deftly averted a diplomatic crisis over trade tariffs, he was the toast of Whitehall. His presence commanded respect. His words carried weight. Yet his eyes often betrayed a weariness that no amount of acclaim could erase. His wife, Lady Evelyn Harrington, was a decade necessary, hinting at ambitions beyond his station. Colonel Marcus Thorne, a retired military man and Sir Reginald's old comrade from their days in India, was a guest at the estate. Broad-shouldered and ruddy-faced, his voice boomed like cannon fire, recounting tales of tiger hunts and monsoon campaigns over glasses of brandy. His laughter filled rooms, but his debts, particularly one owed to Sir Reginald from a failed railway venture, cast a shadow over his joviality. Miss Clara Beaumont, the French governess, brought a touch of continental grace to the household. Slender and poised, with auburn hair and a quick, disarming smile, she had been employed for 6 months to tutor the Harringtons' young niece, Amelia. Her soft accent and sharp wit charmed the staff, but her past held a grudge. Her family's ruin, tied to a diplomatic blunder by Sir Reginald in Paris years ago, lingered in her quiet moments. The staff was anchored by Mr. Edwards, the butler, a man of 60 whose face was as impassive as the granite statues in the garden. He had served Crimson Court for 3 decades, his loyalty as unyielding as the oak paneling in the Great Hall. Yet, his hands trembled slightly when polishing silver, a sign of age, or perhaps something more. Dr. Julian Forbes, the family physician, lived in a nearby village but was a frequent guest, his medical bag a constant companion. A scholarly man in his 40s, with thinning hair and a penchant for quoting Hippocrates, he had a calm demeanor that masked a rumored rivalry with Sir Reginald over a medical patent years prior. His visits were as much social as professional, his laughter mingling with the clink of wine glasses. On the evening of October 15th, 1925, Crimson Court buzzed with anticipation. Sir Reginald had planned a dinner to celebrate his Geneva success, inviting a select few to share in his triumph. The air was thick with the scent of roasting pheasant and the rustle of autumn leaves skittering across the gravel drive. The drawing room, adorned with crimson velvet drapes and a crystal chandelier that cast prisms across the walls, hummed fairy tales, dreaming of knights and dragons. Mr. Langford hovered near the sideboard, scribbling on a notepad. Sir Reginald, the telegram from the Foreign Office arrived this afternoon. Shall I fetch it? Later, Victor, Sir Reginald said, waving a hand. Tonight is for celebration, not correspondence. Dr. Forbes adjusted his spectacles, peering at his host. You look a touch fatigued, Reginald. That journey must have taken its toll. Have you been taking the sedatives I prescribed? Nonsense, Julian, Sir Reginald replied with a chuckle. I'm fit as ever. Just a touch of insomnia. Nothing a good night's rest won't cure. Edwards, the butler, glided into the room, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug. Dinner is served, sir. As the guests moved toward the dining room, the atmosphere was convivial. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered like a pot left too long on the stove. Earlier that day, Lady Evelyn had been overheard arguing with her husband in the conservatory, her voice sharp over matters of finance, a mysterious letter mentioned in hushed tones. Colonel Thorne's debt to Sir Reginald, a substantial sum from their failed railway scheme, hung like a specter over their camaraderie. Mr. Langford had been caught rifling through the Diplomat's desk the previous week, claiming he sought misplaced documents. But his flushed cheeks told another story. Miss Beaumont's smile faltered when Sir Reginald spoke of Paris, her family's ruin a silent wound. Dr. Forbes, ever observant, had prescribed strong sedatives for Sir Reginald's insomnia. But whispers of a professional grudge lingered. Even Edwards, the unflappable butler, had faced his master's ire over an accusation of stolen silver, his dismissal threatened. Into this delicate web of motives and misgivings stepped an unexpected guest. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, whose egg-shaped head and magnificent mustache were as famous as his little gray cells. Poirot had been traveling through Sussex, en route to London, when a minor derailment delayed his train. Seeking lodging, he had telegraphed his old heart. It is a soup of motives, no? And I, Poirot, am a connoisseur of such flavors. As they entered the grand hall, its oak-paneled walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, Poirot's keen eyes missed nothing. The flicker of Lady Evelyn's smile, the nervous tick in Langford's fingers, the way Thorne's laughter rang just a shade too loud, all were noted, catalogued, and filed away in the orderly chambers of his mind. The butler's measured steps, the governess's fleeting glance toward Sir Reginald, the doctor's subtle adjustment of his cufflinks, each gesture was a brushstroke in the portrait of Crimson Court. The great clock in the hall struck 7, its chimes resonating like a prelude to fate. The guests moved to the dining room, where the long mahogany table gleamed under candlelight, its surface reflecting the promise of a splendid evening. But Poirot, ever attuned to the undercurrents of human nature, sensed the storm brewing beneath the polished veneer. Little did he know, the night would demand every ounce of his deductive genius, for Crimson Court was about to become a stage for murder. Chapter 2. The Crime Discovered. The dining room of Crimson Court shimmered under the glow of a dozen candles, their flames dancing in the crystal chandelier like stars caught in a velvet night. The long mahogany table, polished to a mirror's sheen, bore the weight of silver platters laden with consommé, roast beef with all the trimmings, and delicate crème brûlée, each dish a testament to the Harringtons' refined taste. The air was rich with the aroma of rosemary and claret, and the conversation flowed as freely as the wine, weaving through the latest jazz tunes from London's smoky clubs to the simmering unrest in far-off European capitals. It was October 15th, 1925, and the evening promised celebration for Sir Reginald Harrington's diplomatic triumph in Geneva, a triumph that had cemented his reputation as a master of international finesse. The guests, a carefully curated ensemble, embodied the elegance and tension of the era. Sir Reginald, the diplomat himself, presided at the head. Glasses were filled and plates cleared with silent efficiency, and at the table's edge sat Captain Arthur Hastings and Hercule Poirot, the unexpected guests, the latter's green eyes scanning the room with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. "Mr. Poirot," Lady Evelyn said, her voice smooth as silk, leaning slightly forward. "Your reputation precedes you. That affair on the Orient Express, why, it's the talk of every drawing room. Tell us, how do you unravel such tangled webs?" Poirot inclined his egg-shaped head, his mustache twitching with a modest smile. "Madame, it is not the web that fascinates, but the threads, the little details, the inconsistencies. The human psyche, it reveals all, if one employs the little gray cells with method and order." Colonel Thorne guffawed, nearly spilling his brandy. "Gray cells. Sounds like something out of a laboratory, not a tiger hunt. Give me a clear shot and a steady hand any day over psychics and riddles." "Each to his own, Colonel," Poirot replied, his tone polite but firm. "But even the jungle, it has its patterns, no?" Hastings chuckled beside him. "Poirot, you'll find a mystery in the pudding next." The table laughed, but Poirot's eyes never left the guests, noting the way Langford's fingers tightened on his napkin, the fleeting frown on Miss Beaumont's lips, the way Dr. Forbes adjusted his glasses when Sir Reginald spoke of Geneva. The undercurrents were subtle but unmistakable. A glance too long, a laugh too forced. At precisely 9:45 p.m., as the dessert plates were cleared, Sir Reginald rose, smoothing his dinner jacket. "My apologies, friends," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority softened by charm. "A small matter requires my attention, a telegram to draft in my study. I shan't be long. Do carry on without me." He excused himself with a nod to Lady Evelyn, who smiled tightly, and made his way to his study, a room on the ground floor known to all as his sanctum. The study was a fortress of solitude, oak-paneled wall, not one to dawdle without reason. Lady Evelyn, seated on a velvet settee, fanned herself delicately. "Perhaps he's caught up in his papers. Reginald is meticulous to a fault." Her tone was light, but her fingers twisted the edge of her shawl. Colonel Thorne drained his glass. "Man's probably drafting a treaty single-handedly. Always was a workhorse." Miss Beaumont excused herself briefly to check on young Amelia, returning with a reassuring nod. Langford stepped out to the lavatory, his absence brief but noted. Dr. Forbes retrieved a book from the library, and Edwards bustled to the kitchen for more port. The room felt emptier without Sir Reginald's presence, the laughter quieter. By 10:30 p.m., unease had taken root. Lady Evelyn rose, her sapphire earrings glinting. Edwards, do check on Sir Reginald. It's unlike him to be so long. The butler nodded, his face as unreadable as ever, and strode to the study door. He knocked firmly, the sound echoing in the quiet hall. "Sir Reginald? Are you all right, sir?" Silence. He tried the handle, locked. "Sir Reginald, please respond." Another knock, louder this time. Colonel Thorne joined him, his military instincts kicking in. "Reginald, old man, open the door." He pounded with a fist, rattling the frame. Dr. Forbes frowned. "This isn't right. We should force the door." Poirot, who had followed with his characteristic measured step, raised a hand. "Messieurs, mesdames, come, I implore you. Let us observe before we act. The method. It is everything." The group moved to the garden, their breath misting in the chilly air as they approached the French window of the study. The curtains were partially drawn, but through the gap, a horrifying tableau emerged. Sir Reginald slumped over his desk, his head resting on a blotter stained with a dark, spreading pool of blood. A dagger, its hilt ornate with an Indian design, protruded from his back. Papers were scattered around him, and the safe stood slightly ajar, its contents in disarray. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot body, his fingers probing for a pulse. "He's gone," he said gravely. "Stabbed through the heart. Death was instantaneous, I'd wager, within the last 20 to 30 minutes. Poirot's eyes darted across the scene, taking in every detail. The dagger, a kriss from Sir Reginald's collection, its blade embedded deep. The half-written telegram on the desk, scrawled in the diplomat's precise hand. Urgent, betrayal confirmed, must act. The safe, its door ajar, papers spilling out. A single footprint in the dust near the window, too faint to identify. The room was a paradox, a sealed chamber with no apparent entry or exit, yet a man lay dead within. "Do not touch anything," Poirot commanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "This is a crime scene of the most impossible nature. The order, the method, it must be preserved." Edwards confirmed the door had been bolted when he checked at 9:30 p.m., and the window latched. "I swear it, sir," he said, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "No one could have entered." Lady Evelyn, recovering, clutched a handkerchief. "Who could do this? Reginald had enemies, yes, but here? In our home?" Colonel Thorne muttered, "Diplomatic secrets, perhaps. The man dealt with dangerous people." Langford, pale behind his spectacles, stammered, I was only gone a moment. I saw nothing." Miss Beaumont's eyes were wide, but she said nothing, her hands clasped tightly. Dr. Forbes shook his head. "This is madness. A locked room. How?" Hastings turned to Poirot. "It's impossible, old chap. No one could get in or out." "Could it be suicide?" "Non, mon ami," Poirot said, his gaze fixed on the dagger's angle. "The wound, it is not self-inflicted. The angle, the force, it speaks of another hand. And the bolt, the latch. They tell a story we must unravel." The local constable was summoned, a nervous young man out of his depth, but word was sent to Scotland Yard for Inspector Japp, who knew Poirot's methods. In the interim, Poirot took informal charge, his authority unquestioned. Suspicion settled like dust over egg-shaped head tilted as he surveyed the scene, his green eyes sharp beneath the brim of his Homburg hat. His companion, Captain Arthur Hastings, fidgeted beside him, his honest face creased with worry. The local constable, a young man named Perkins, had secured the estate, but his nervous demeanor betrayed his inexperience. Word had been sent to Scotland Yard, and by mid-morning, a familiar figure arrived. Inspector Japp, his overcoat damp from the journey, his mustache bristling with determination. Poirot, you old fox, Jap said, shaking hands with a wry grin. Can't seem to escape you at a murder scene. A locked room, eh? Sounds like one of your puzzles. Mon cher Jap, Poirot replied, his mustache twitching. It is indeed a puzzle, but one that the little gray cells will solve. A locked room is not so impenetrable when one considers the human element. Jap grunted, eyeing the splintered study door. Locked from the inside, dagger in the back, no sign of entry. Smells like suicide to me, but you'll tell me I'm wrong. Précisément, Poirot said, his voice firm. The angle of the dagger. It is impossible for self-infliction. The force, the position. No, this is murder, and a clever one. With Jap's arrival, the investigation began in earnest. Poirot requested the library as his base, a room of towering bookshelves and leather armchairs, its air thick with the musty scent of old paper. The suspects, Lady Evelyn Harrington, Mr. Victor Langford, Colonel Marcus Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, Dr. Julian Forbes, and Mr. Edwards, were summoned one by one, their faces a gallery of unease. Hastings took notes, his pen scratching as Poirot's questions probed like a surgeon's scalpel. First came Lady Evelyn, her elegance undimmed despite the pallor of her cheeks. She sat gracefully, her hands folded in her lap, her sapphire earrings catching the light. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I loved his desk last week. I was looking for a misplaced contract, I swear. But he accused me of theft, threatened to dismiss me. I needed this job, Mr. Poirot. My debts, they're substantial." "And these debts," Poirot said, leaning forward, "they drove you to borrow from Sir Reginald's petty cash, no?" Langford flushed. "A small sum, to tide me over. I meant to repay it." "Motive, job security and covering embezzlement." Langford's desperation was palpable, his alibi porous. Colonel Marcus Thorne strode in, his military bearing intact, despite the strain in his eyes. He lit a cigar, the smoke curling like a question mark. "Reggie and I were mates from India, thick as thieves. Owe him money? Pfft. A gentleman's loan, nothing more. A few thousand from that damned railway venture. I went out for a smoke in the garden at 10, but I was back quick. Didn't see a soul near the study." Poirot's gaze was steady. "And this loan, Colonel? It weighed heavily, perhaps? A man of pride does not enjoy such debts." Thorne bristled. "I'm no killer, Poirot. Reggie was a friend." "Motive, debt elimination." The Colonel's joviality masked a financial strain that could turn deadly. Miss Clara Beaumont entered, her auburn hair pinned neatly, her French accent soft but precise. "Monsieur Poirot, I am but a governess. Sir Reginald was kind to employ me, though, yes, his actions in Paris years ago ruined my father's career. A diplomatic error, they called it. My family lost everything. But I harbor no hate, only duty to little Amelia." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, mademoiselle, the past, it clings like a shadow. You were absent from the drawing room, checking on the child, Oui, she said, meeting his gaze. "Amelia was restless. I was gone only minutes." "Motive, vengeance," his composure faltering. "Lost last week, sir. I reported it to Sir Reginald. Motive: avoiding dismissal. The butler's loyalty was unquestioned, but his trembling hands hinted at secrets. With interviews concluded, Poirot and Hastings returned to the study, now cordoned off by Constable Perkins. The room was a frozen moment of chaos. Sir Reginald's body, covered with a sheet, lay slumped over the desk. The Indian Chris dagger, a gift from Colonel Thorne, protruded from his back. The safe's contents were disheveled, a few documents missing. The half-written telegram, urgent, betrayal confirmed, must act, lay stark against the blood-stained blotter. Poirot knelt, examining the floor. A faint footprint in the dust near the French window, too smudged to identify. A scrap of torn fabric, green silk, caught on the desk's edge. The window's latch remained secure, the bolt on the door intact before it was broken. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low. "It's baffling. The door was bolted, the window latched, no way in or out. It's as if the killer vanished into thin air." "No, mon ami," Poirot replied, his finger tracing the window frame. "The impossible. It is only impossible until the method is revealed. The footprint, the fabric, the safe. They speak if we listen." Japp joined them, his notebook open. "We've searched the grounds, no signs of forced entry. The dagger's from Reginald's collection. Anyone here could have grabbed it. But how they got in? Beats me." Poirot paced, his steps deliberate. "The telegram, Inspector. It suggests a motive. Betrayal. Perhaps diplomatic secrets or something more personal. We must examine the safe's contents." The safe revealed a mix of diplomatic correspondence and personal letters, one unsigned and threatening. Reveal the truth or pay the price. Fingerprints were smudged, useless. The footprint in the garden near the window matched no one's shoes precisely. The locked room remained an enigma, its secrets locked tighter than the bolt that had sealed Sir Reginald's fate. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The afternoon of October 16, 1925, draped Crimson Court in a muted glow, the sun struggling through the Sussex mist like a witness reluctant to speak. The estate, once a beacon of elegance, now hummed with the quiet tension of a house under siege, not by an external enemy, but by the secrets within its crimson walls. Hercule Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted at a precise angle, stood in the grand hall, his green eyes scanning the portraits of stern-faced Harrington ancestors, as if they might whisper the truth. Captain Arthur Hastings hovered nearby, his notebook filled with scribbled observations, while Inspector Japp coordinated with the local constable, Perkins, to secure the grounds. The study, where Sir Reginald Harrington had been found stabbed in an impossibly locked room, remained a sealed enigma, its splintered door a testament to the violence that had shattered the night. Poirot had insisted on a reconstruction of the fatal evening, gathering the suspects in the drawing room, where the crimson velvet drapes absorbed the light like blood soaking into cloth. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the faces of Lady Evelyn Harrington, Victor Langford, Colonel Marcus Thorne, Miss Clara Beaumont, Dr. Julian Forbes, and Mr. Edwards. Each sat stiffly, their eyes darting between Poirot and one another, as if expecting the detective's little gray cells to unmask them at any moment. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "Let us retrace the evening of Sir Reginald's death. He left the dining room at 9:45 p.m. to draft a telegram in his study. Who among you left the drawing room after this time, and for what purpose? Speak truthfully, for the truth, it reveals itself in the details. Lady Evelyn, her raven hair pinned tightly, spoke first, her voice steady but her fingers twisting her sapphire bracelet. I stepped out to my boudoir around 10 p.m. Window, no? Thorne frowned. I walked the garden earlier that day. Must have been then. Miss Clara Beaumont, her auburn hair catching the firelight, spoke softly. I went to check on Amelia, the niece, at about 10:05. She was restless, poor child. I was gone perhaps 10 minutes. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And this study, mademoiselle, it is near the nursery, is it not? Oui, but I did not go there, she said, her voice firm but her hands clasped tightly. Dr. Julian Forbes adjusted his glasses, his scholarly calm strained. I fetched a book from the library at 10:15, a medical journal. I was back quickly. The drawing room was full when I returned. And your medical bag, doctor? Poirot asked. It contains sedatives, oui? Perhaps one dose is missing? Forbes bristled. My bag is secure. I'd know if anything was taken. Finally, Edwards, the butler, stood rigid, his gray hair immaculate. I went to the kitchen for more port at 10. The staff saw me there. I was nowhere near the study. Poirot nodded. Yet a key from your ring, Monsieur Edwards. It was found under a rug in the hall. Lost, you say, but perhaps used? Edwards's face remained impassive, but a bead of sweat glistened. I reported it missing days ago, sir. The alibis were flimsy, each absence unverified, a tapestry of opportunity woven with gaps. Poirot dismissed the group, turning his attention to the study. With Japp and Hastings, he re-examined the scene. The dagger, an Indian kris from Sir Reginald's collection, was confirmed as the murder weapon, its blade clean except for the diplomat's blood. The safe, ajar, revealed missing documents, diplomatic cables perhaps, or something more personal. The half-written telegram, urgent, betrayal confirmed, must act, lay stark on the desk, its ink dried in mid-sentence. The footprint near the French window was faint, possibly a man's boot, but the garden mud yielded no clear match. The green silk fabric on the desk's edge was a tantalizing clue, resembling Miss Beaumont's dress, though the study. But Edward's kitchen alibi held. 2 maids vouched for his presence. Langford's spectacles, found near the study door, hinted at a hurried escape. But he claimed they fell earlier, unnoticed. Dr. Forbes's sedative bottle, checked by Japp, was missing a small amount, but Forbes insisted it was accounted for in prior doses. The green silk fabric, when compared to Miss Beaumont's dress, was a near match. Yet her rosebush story held a grain of truth. A thorn-snagged hem was visible. Poirot's search took a curious turn when he examined the study's bookshelf. A faint draft led him to a hidden panel, revealed by pressing a carved rosette. It opened to a narrow passage, dusty and cobwebbed, leading to the wine cellar. Mon Dieu! Hastings exclaimed. A secret way in. But Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami. The dust, it is undisturbed, save for a single scuff mark, recent but not last night. This passage has not been used in years. The scuff mark, however, was fresh enough to intrigue. Poirot filed it away, his mind turning to the safe's contents. Among the papers was a ledger noting payments to an unknown party, initialed CB. Clara Beaumont? Or a coincidence? Another red herring surfaced. A smudged cigarette case near the window, engraved with Thorne's initials. But he admitted to losing it weeks ago. As evening fell, a new development shook the household. Lady Evelyn, retiring to her boudoir, let out a piercing scream. The group rushed to find her clutching a note slipped under her door. "You're next." The handwriting matched the safe's threatening letter, but again no fingerprints. Was it a genuine threat or another distraction? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The killer, they play a game of shadows, but the shadows, they betray. He confided in Hastings as they stood by the fire. "These clues, mon ami, some are true, some are false. The footprint, the fabric, the key, they are pieces of a puzzle." But the web of deception was tightening, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to cut through its strands. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The evening of October 16, 1925, descended upon Crimson Court like a velvet curtain, heavy with the weight of secrets. Rain lashed the crimson-bricked walls, the wind howling through the Sussex hills as if mourning Sir Reginald Harrington's murder. Inside, the grand estate felt like a gilded cage, its oak-paneled halls echoing with the footsteps of suspects and the whispers of doubt. Hercule Poirot, his polished boots gleaming despite the damp, stood in the library, his egg-shaped head tilted as he sifted through the clues amassed thus far. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, scribbled notes beside him, while Inspector Japp, his mustache bristling with frustration, coordinated with Constable Perkins to guard the study's splintered door. The locked room murder, Sir Reginald stabbed with an Indian kriss, the door bolted, the French window latched, remained an enigma, its solution tantalizingly close yet veiled by a maze of red herrings. Poirot's investigation had unearthed a tangle of motives: Lady Evelyn's financial disputes and inheritance, Victor Langford's embezzlement and job fears, Colonel Marcus Thorne's debts, Miss Clara Beaumont's vendetta, Dr. Julian Forbes's rumored affair and professional grudge, Edwards's threatened dismissal. The clues: footprint, torn silk, missing key, threatening letter, pointed everywhere and nowhere, each suspect's alibi porous as the mist outside. But now, new complications arose, twisting the puzzle into ever darker shapes. Poirot began the evening by summoning the suspects to the drawing room, the crimson drapes absorbing the candlelight like silent witnesses. "Mes amis," he said, his voice calm but piercing. "The truth, it hides behind layers of deception. Let us peel them back. Tell me, has anyone received further threats since the note to Madame Harrington?" Lady Evelyn, her sapphire eyes shadowed, produced the note from her boudoir. "You're next." The handwriting matched the threatening letter in Sir Reginald's safe, but its smudged ink offered no clarity. "Discreetly. Killing him would ruin everything." Motive deepened, an affair confirmed, with Sir Reginald's death clearing their path. But Poirot noted their candor. Too open for killers? Next, Victor Langford, cornered in the library, confessed under Poirot's relentless gaze. "I took money from the petty cash," he stammered, adjusting his tie. "Sir Reginald found out, threatened to ruin me. But I didn't kill him. I was in the drawing room, I swear." His desperation was palpable, but a ledger in his room, discovered by Japp, showed larger sums missing, enough to suggest blackmail, or worse. Colonel Thorne, puffing his cigar, revealed a bombshell. "Reginald wasn't the saint everyone thinks," he growled. "In India, he sold secrets to a rival faction. Cost me my command. I didn't kill him, but I'm not weeping." The accusation painted Sir Reginald as a traitor, his betrayal confirmed, telegram taking on new weight. Was Thorne's debt a cover for deeper vengeance? Miss Clara Beaumont, her auburn hair loose in the candlelight, admitted her grudge was personal. My father's ruin in Paris, it was Sir Reginald's doing. A diplomatic blunder, they said, but it destroyed us. I came here to face him, not to kill. Her eyes held defiance, but Poirot noted her hands, calloused as if practiced with a blade. Edwards, the butler, stood firm, but a kitchen maid wavered. "He wasn't always in the kitchen, sir," she whispered to Hastings. "I saw him near the study corridor just before 10. Edwards denied it, his alibi cracking. Then came a startling twist. Dr. Forbes, re-examining the body under Poirot's insistence, revised his findings. "The dagger wasn't the cause of death," he said, his voice tight. "There's poison in the wound, aconite, likely from my sedative bottle. He was stabbed post-mortem to mislead us." The revelation shifted the timeline. Poison first, then a staged stabbing. But aconite required access, and Forbes' bottle was missing a dose. No, another twist. "You think," he cried, "I was hiding my debt, not evidence." The notebook confirmed his embezzlement but held no murder clues, another misdirection. The locked room's mystery deepened with a discovery. The bolt, examined closely, showed signs of tampering. A thin string, barely visible, threaded through the keyhole, could have pulled it shut from outside. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "The impossible. It is an illusion of mechanics." But the string was missing, and the window's latch, when tested, showed a faint scratch, suggesting a tool, perhaps a magnet, used to relatch it. Hastings, pacing, threw up his hands. "Poirot, it's maddening. Poison, no poison, strings, magnets. Everyone's guilty and no one could have done it." "Patience, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice a soothing balm. "The complications, they are the killer's shield. But the little gray cells, they pierce it." Another twist emerged. A phonograph in the library, used for Amelia's lessons, held a record with faint scratches. Voices, perhaps, from the night of the murder. Played softly, it captured a muffled argument. Sir Reginald's voice, "You'll pay for this betrayal." But whose voice answered? Too faint to tell. As midnight approached, a storm raged outside, mirroring the chaos within. Poirot gathered the suspects again, his eyes scanning their faces. "The killer," he said, "has woven a web of lies, but the threads, they fray. The string, the scratch, the voices, they point to one among you." Lady Evelyn clutched her shawl. Langford's spectacles slipped. Thorne's cigar trembled. Beaumont's eyes darted. Forbes adjusted his bag. Edward stood still, but his hands betrayed a tremor. The room crackled with tension, each suspect a potential predator or prey. Poirot confided in Hastings as they retired to the library. "The twists, they multiply, but the truth, it is like a star in the storm. We must navigate by it." He spread the clues on a table. The tampered bolt, the scratched latch, the phonograph's whispers, the ledger's initials. The Inspector Japp, his mustache bristling with impatience, leaned against a pillar. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the weight of impending truth. Poirot, his egg-shaped head held high, his Homburg hat resting on a side table, paced before the group, his polished boots clicking on the marble floor. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice resonant yet measured. "The murder of Sir Reginald Harrington, in a room locked and latched, is no longer an impossible crime. The little gray cells of Hercule Poirot have unraveled the threads of deception. The killer stands among you, and the truth, it is revealed." The room stilled, breaths held. Lady Evelyn's sapphire eyes widened. Langford's spectacles slipped. Thorne's cigar paused mid-puff. Beaumont's hands clasped tightly. Forbes adjusted his glasses, and Edward stood rigid, his butler's composure a fragile mask. Poirot gestured to the study, its splintered door visible through the hall's archway. Sir Reginald was found stabbed, the Indian kriss in his back. The door bolted, the French window latched. An impossible crime, you thought. But the impossible, it is an illusion, crafted with care. Let us reconstruct. He began with the timeline, his voice deliberate, each word a step toward clarity. At 9:45 p.m., Sir Reginald left the dining room to draft a telegram in his study. By 10:30 he was dead, stabbed through the heart. The alibis, each of you absent briefly, provided opportunity. But the method, it was the key. Poirot turned to the clues, laying them out like cards on a table. The footprint in the garden, near the window, faint but fresh. The green silk fabric on the desk, torn from a dress. The missing key from Monsieur Edwards's ring, found in the hall. The threatening letter in the safe, reveal the truth or pay the price. The tampered bolt with signs of a string. The scratched latch, suggesting a tool. The phonograph's faint voices, capturing an argument. And the ledger himself unlatched it, expecting a visitor. A secret meeting, hinted at by his telegram. Betrayal confirmed. Must act. He let the killer in, believing it a matter of diplomacy or blackmail. The killer entered, struck, and exited, relatching the window with a magnet through the glass. A subtle scratch on the latch betrays this. Hastings gasped. But Poirot, who? Everyone's got a motive. Poirot's mustache twitched. Indeed, mon ami. Let us examine the motives. Madame Harrington, inheritance and an affair with Dr. Forbes. Monsieur Langford, embezzlement and fear of dismissal. Colonel Thorne, debts and a betrayed career. Mademoiselle Beaumont, revenge for her family's ruin. Dr. Forbes, a professional grudge and love. Monsieur Edwards, a threatened dismissal. Each could kill, but only one fits the pattern. He stepped forward, his voice rising. The killer is Miss Clara Beaumont. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Clara's auburn hair framed a face pale with shock, her eyes wide. Monsieur Poirot, you are mistaken. I could not. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. Mademoiselle, your protestations, they are expected. But let us deduce. The green silk fabric, it matches your dress. Torn not on a rose bush as you claimed, but on the desk's edge during a struggle. The footprint, your shoe, cleverly disguised with a man's soul, left a trace in the garden mud. The ledger's initials, CB. Not Charles Balfour, but Clara Beaumont, noting payments for blackmail. You were extorting Sir Reginald for his past sins in Paris, threatening to expose his diplomatic blunder. Clara's hands trembled, but she shook her head. Blackmail. Absurd, Poirot continued, relentless. The phonograph. It captured your voice, arguing with Sir Reginald. Parisian crest, your family's not Thorne's. The magnet found in your sewing kit matches the latch's scratch, and the phonograph, when played at full volume, reveals your accent in the argument. You planned this, believing Poirot would be baffled by the locked room. The room was silent, the suspects frozen. Lady Evelyn clutched her shawl. Langford's spectacles fogged. Thorne's cigar dropped ash. Forbes stared. Edwards's hands shook. Clara's eyes filled with tears, her defiance crumbling. "Why, Clara?" Lady Evelyn whispered. "Reginald was difficult, but this—" Clara's voice broke. "He ruined us, my father, my family. In Paris, his error cost us everything. I came to make him pay, to force him to admit it. He laughed, said I was nothing. I couldn't stop myself." Poirot nodded. "The heart, it seeks justice. But vengeance, it blinds. You killed a man, mademoiselle, and the law, it must judge." Japp stepped forward, cuffs in hand. "Miss Beaumont, you're under arrest for the murder of Sir Reginald Harrington." Clara collapsed into a chair, sobbing, as Japp led her away. The others dispersed, stunned, their secrets exposed but their innocence confirmed. Hastings approached Poirot, his face a mix of awe and relief. "Good Lord, Poirot, you did it. But how did you know it wasn't a conspiracy? They all had reasons." Poirot smiled faintly. "The motives, they were many, but the method, it was singular. Only one could execute such a plan with precision. The others, their guilt was in their hearts, not their hands." Japp returned, shaking his head. "You're a marvel, Poirot. That magnet trick, never would have thought of it. But it fits, every piece." Poirot adjusted his tie. "The little gray cells, mon ami, they see what others miss. The locked room, it was no match for method and order." As the hall emptied, the chandelier's light dimmed, casting long shadows. Crimson Court, its secrets laid bare, stood quieter now. The weight of Perkins to finalize the arrest of Miss Clara Beaumont, the governess unmasked as Sir Reginald Harrington's killer. The grand hall, where Poirot had unveiled the truth hours earlier, was empty now, its chandelier dim, the portraits of Harrington ancestors watching silently. Clara, her auburn hair disheveled, her defiance broken, had been taken to the local constabulary. Her confession, born of vengeance for her family's ruin in Paris, still ringing in the ears of those who heard it. The impossible crime, a locked room with a bolted door and latched window, had been solved. Clara had entered through the French window, unlatched by Sir Reginald for a secret meeting, stabbed him with her family's kriss, and relatched the window with a magnet, leaving a scratched latch as her only mistake. The string on the bolt, the poisoned dagger, the threatening note, all red herrings, crafted to obscure her guilt. Poirot, ever meticulous, requested a final meeting in the library with Japp and Hastings to clarify the deductions, ensuring no thread remained loose. The suspects, Lady Evelyn Harrington, Victor Langford, Colonel Marcus Thorne, Dr. Julian Forbes, and Mr. Edwards, were permitted to attend, their presence a formality to close the case. Each bore the marks of the ordeal. Lady Evelyn's sapphire eyes were shadowed, Langford's spectacles fogged with relief, Thorne's cigar unlit, Forbes's scholarly calm restored, Edwards's butler's mask intact but strained. "Mon cher Japp," Poirot began, his voice warm yet precise. "You have the confession, but the method. It must be clear, for justice is not served by doubt. Let us review, step by step, how Mademoiselle Beaumont committed this crime. Japp nodded, his notebook open. Go on, Poirot. I'll admit that magnet trick had me stumped. Lay it out plain. Poirot paced, his polished boots clicking softly. Sir Reginald. He was a man of secrets. His telegram, betrayal confirmed, must act, hinted at a confrontation. He expected a visitor. Oh, brilliant, Poirot. But how did you see through the distractions? That poisoned tisane, the cigarette case, the secret passage. They nearly fooled us all. Poirot's mustache twitched. The little grey cells, mon ami, they seek order. The tisane was chamomile, the cigarette case lost weeks ago, the passage unused for years. These were noise meant to drown the signal. The true clues, fabric, footprint, scratch, kriss, spoke of Mademoiselle Beaumont's hand. Japp scratched his head. And the others? They all had reasons to want him dead, debts, affairs, grudges. You're sure it wasn't a conspiracy? Poirot shook his head. No, Inspector. The motives, there were many, but the execution, it was singular. Only one could wield the kriss with such precision, plant the distractions with such care. The others, their guilt was in their hearts, greed, love, anger, but not in their actions. Lady Evelyn, seated near the fire, spoke softly. Mr. Poirot, you've saved us from suspicion, but the cost. Reginald is gone, and Clara, poor Clara, driven to such madness. Poirot's eyes softened. Madame, the heart seeks justice, but vengeance, it destroys. Mademoiselle Beaumont chose her path, and the law, it must follow. The aftermath unfolded swiftly. Clara, now in custody, faced trial for murder. Her confession, tearful but complete, detailed her years of resentment, her plan to confront Sir Reginald, and the moment of rage that led to the fatal blow. The kriss, engraved with her family's Parisian crest, was catalogued as evidence, its history a silent witness to her motive. The magnet, found in her sewing kit, matched the latch's scratch, sealing her fate. The household began to heal, though scars remained. Lady Evelyn, now the estate's sole heir, announced plans to sell Crimson Court, its grandeur tainted by tragedy. I cannot stay, she told Poirot privately. The memories, they choke me. Her affair with Dr. Forbes, though exposed, was set aside. They parted ways, Forbes returning to his village practice, his the wrong side of it. As the day waned, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, their bags packed for the train to London. Japp joined them on the gravel drive, the manor looming behind like a crimson sentinel. You've done it again, Poirot, Japp said, clapping him on the shoulder. Scotland Yard owes you a pint, or 10. Poirot bowed slightly. The little grey cells, they require no reward but the truth, mon ami, though a tisane would not be refused. Hastings chuckled, adjusting his hat. What a devilish case, Poirot. That locked room, I thought we'd never crack it. The impossible, Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes twinkling, is only a challenge to order and method. The human heart, it builds walls, but the mind, it finds the door. The train's whistle echoed in the distance, signaling their departure. As they walked down the drive, the gardens blooming with autumn's last roses, Poirot paused to glance back at Crimson Court. The estate stood proud but wounded, its secrets laid bare. A tragedy, mon ami, he murmured. But justice, it restores balance, if not peace. The suspects, now cleared, gathered briefly to bid farewell. Lady Evelyn, poised despite her grief, offered Poirot a small nod. You've given us closure, Mr. Poirot. Thank you. Thorne raised a glass. Langford managed a weak smile. Forbes shook his hand, and Edwards bowed formally. The weight of suspicion had lifted, but the memory of Clara's act lingered. As the car carried Poirot and Hastings to the station, the Sussex hills rolled past, their beauty a stark contrast to the darkness they left behind. Hastings leaned back, exhaling. Another victory for the Grey Cells, eh, Poirot? Oui, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft. But the victory, it is bittersweet. A life lost, a soul broken. Yet the truth, it prevails. Chapter 8. Reflections and Farewells. The afternoon of October 17, 1925, draped Crimson Court in a quiet radiance, as if vengeance for her family's ruin had entered through the unlatched window, struck in rage, and escaped with a magnet's clever trick, leaving only a scratched latch and a web of red herrings. Her confession, raw with grief and anger, had closed the case, but the ripples of her act lingered among those left behind. Poirot and Hastings, preparing to board the evening train to London, lingered at Crimson Court for one final afternoon, invited by Lady Evelyn Harrington to tie the loose ends of the household's fractured bonds. The library, with its leather-bound tomes and crackling fire, became their gathering place. The remaining suspects, Lady Evelyn, Victor Langford, Colonel Marcus Thorne, Dr. Julian Forbes, and Mr. Edwards, joined them, their faces marked by relief, guilt, and the quiet resolve to move forward. Lady Evelyn, her raven hair pinned loosely, stood by the window, her sapphire eyes distant. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice soft but steady, "you've given us truth, but it's a bitter gift. Reginald's death, Clara's betrayal, it's torn the heart from this place. I cannot stay." Poirot inclined his egg-shaped head, his mustache twitching gently. "Madame, the truth. It is often painful, but it clears the fog. Crimson Court, it will heal, as will you." She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of her shawl. "I've decided to sell the estate. The memories, they're too heavy. I'll return to London, perhaps find a quieter life." Her affair with Dr. Forbes, exposed during the investigation, had ended quietly. Forbes, seated across the room, his medical bag at his side, offered a rueful smile. "I'll return to my practice," he said. "Reginald's death showed me the folly of secrets. I wish Lady Evelyn well, but our paths diverge." Poirot's eyes gleamed with understanding. "The heart, it seeks solace, but wisdom, it guides us forward, Doctor." Victor Langford, his spectacles polished to a shine, sat hunched, his nervous tics subdued. "Stay until the sale, then find a new post." Sir Reginald's accusation, stealing silver, stung. "But your work, Mr. Poirot, cleared my name." "Loyalty, Monsieur Edwards," Poirot replied. "It is a rare jewel. You wear it well." Hastings, ever the sentimentalist, looked around the room. "It's odd, Poirot. They're all free now. But it feels like they're still tethered to this place, to what happened." Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the fire. "The human heart, mon ami. It carries its burdens, even when justice is served. But Crimson Court, it will find new life, as will they." The conversation turned to Clara Beaumont, whose trial loomed in London. Her confession had painted a vivid picture. A young woman consumed by the ruin of her family, her father's disgrace in Paris tied to Sir Reginald's diplomatic misstep. The kriss, her family's heirloom, had been both weapon and symbol, its Parisian crest a silent accusation. The magnet, the scratched latch, the staged red herrings, her plan had been meticulous, undone only by Poirot's relentless logic. Lady Evelyn, pouring tea from a silver pot, spoke quietly. "I pitied Clara, you know. She was kind to Amelia, so gentle. To think she carried such hate. It's chilling." Forbes nodded. Her pain drove her to madness. I should have seen it. My sedatives, stolen from my bag, used to mislead us. A doctor's failure. Poirot raised a hand. "Non, doctor. The failure was hers. To choose vengeance over forgiveness. The little gray cells, they saw what the heart obscured." Thorne grunted, lighting his cigar at last. "She fooled us all, the minx. That locked room business, thought it was straight out of a penny dreadful." Langford, emboldened, added, "I thought I was done for when you found my ledger, Mr. Poirot. Thank heavens you saw through it." Edwards, ever discreet, offered a rare opinion. "Miss Beaumont was clever, but pride undid her. She thought no one could match her grace." "Madame the Clarity, it is my duty. May you find peace in time." The others offered their thanks, Forbes with a firm handshake, Thorne with a hearty clap, Langford with a shy nod, Edwards with a formal bow. The group dispersed, their futures uncertain but unburdened by suspicion. As the car arrived to take Poirot and Hastings to the station, the Sussex hills rolled past, their beauty a quiet balm. The train's whistle sounded, a call to new adventures. Poirot adjusted his tie, gazing at the manor one last time. A tragedy, Hastings, but also a lesson. The human heart, it builds walls, but the mind, it finds the way through. Hastings smiled. "Another victory for the gray cells, eh?" "Oui," Poirot said, his voice soft. "But the victory, it is for truth, not for triumph." The car rolled down the drive, Crimson Court fading into the mist. The estate, its secrets laid bare, stood ready for new masters. Its story of murder a chapter closed, Poirot's thoughts turned to London, to new puzzles. But for now, he savored the quiet satisfaction of justice served. Chapter 9. The Hidden Legacy. The twilight of October 17, 1925, settled over Crimson Court like a velvet shroud. The Sussex hills bathed in the soft purples of dusk. The crimson-bricked manor, its gardens wilting into autumn's embrace, stood as a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The murder of Sir Reginald Harrington, stabbed in a locked study by Miss Clara Beaumont, had been solved by Hercule Poirot's relentless logic. His little gray cells piercing the veil of deception. Clara, driven by vengeance for her family's ruin, was now in custody, her trial looming in London. The household, Lady Evelyn Harrington, Victor Langford, Colonel Marcus Thorne, Dr. Julian Forbes and Mr. Edwards, had begun to scatter, their lives reshaped by the truth. Yet, as Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings prepared to depart, a final discovery promised to redefine Crimson Court's legacy. "Lady Evelyn," he said, bowing slightly, "I've uncovered a codicil to Sir Reginald's will, discovered only this morning in a locked drawer at my office. It changes everything." The group gathered in the drawing room, its crimson drapes drawn against the evening chill. The chandelier flickered, casting prisms across the faces of Lady Evelyn, Langford, Thorne, Forbes, and Edwards, who stood by the door, ever the dutiful servant. Poirot, his Homburg hat resting on a side table, tilted his egg-shaped head, his green eyes gleaming with curiosity. Hastings, his notebook at the ready, sensed a final twist in the tale. Grayson opened his briefcase, producing a sealed envelope marked with Sir Reginald's crest. "This codicil," he said, adjusting his pince-nez, "was written 3 months ago, after Sir Reginald's return from Geneva. It was to be revealed only in the event of his death under unusual circumstances." Lady Evelyn, her raven hair loose, leaned forward, her sapphire eyes narrowing. "Unusual? You mean murder?" Grayson nodded. "Precisely, Lady Harrington. Sir Reginald, it seems, anticipated danger. He broke the seal, reading aloud. To my estate's executors, I, Reginald Harrington, add this codicil. Should my death result from foul play, I direct that half my fortune, beyond Lady Evelyn's inheritance, be donated to the International Children's Aid Society to support displaced families of diplomatic service. My diplomatic papers, stored in my safe, are to be released to the Foreign Office, save those marked private, which are to be destroyed unopened." A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Evelyn's hand flew to her throat. "Half the fortune? To charity?" Grayson nodded. "The estate remains yours, Lady Evelyn, but the liquid assets, several £100,000, are halved. Sir Reginald wished to atone for past errors, particularly those affecting families like, well, Miss Beaumont's." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Mon Dieu, a legacy of redemption. Sir Reginald, he knew his sins weighed heavily." Hastings scribbled. "The Foreign Office, dated a week before his death." "This accompanied the codicil," he said. "It requests that certain diplomatic errors, specifically the Paris incident that ruined the Beaumont family, be acknowledged publicly, with an apology to those affected." Lady Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "He never told me. All those years he carried it alone." Poirot nodded. "The art, it buries its burdens, but the conscience, it speaks in time." The group reflected on the codicil's impact. The Children's Aid Society would transform lives, a legacy born of Sir Reginald's guilt. The diplomatic papers, when reviewed by Grayson, revealed minor scandals, implicating none of the suspects, clearing their names further. The private papers, per the codicil, were burned in the library fire, their secrets lost to ash. As night fell, the suspects gathered one last time in the drawing room, the weight of the codicil binding them in shared reflection. Lady Evelyn, her poise softened, spoke first. "Reginald was flawed, but this, it shows he cared, in his way. I'll honor his wishes, sell Crimson Court and start anew." Forbes, his scholarly calm restored, nodded. "I misjudged him. His death brought us truth, but this legacy, it gives us purpose." Langford, his nervous tick gone, vowed, "I'll rebuild my life, make good on my debts. Sir Reginald's forgiveness in his will. It's a second chance." Thorne, lighting his cigar, chuckled. "Old Reggie, always the diplomat. I'll write those memoirs, dedicate a chapter to him. The rascal deserves it." Edwards, his gray hair catching the firelight, offered a rare smile. "I'll serve until the sale, then find a new house. Sir Reginald's memory, it will endure." Poirot, standing by the hearth, addressed them all. "Mes amis, a crime has been solved, a killer brought to justice. But this codicil, It is Sir Reginald's final act, a gesture to heal what he broke. The human heart, it seeks balance, even in death. Hastings moved. Atonement. Hastings nodded. A fitting end, Poirot. But I'll miss this place, grim as it was. Non, mon ami, Poirot said, his eyes twinkling. The place, it is but a stage. The story, it lives in the heart. As the car rolled away, Crimson Court stood proud, its hidden legacy a beacon for those it had sheltered. The train awaited, and with it, new mysteries for Poirot's relentless mind. Chapter 10. Epilogue. The spring of 1930 bloomed over London with a vibrancy that softened the city's gray edges, the cherry blossoms in Hyde Park scattering petals like confetti across the paths. In a cozy flat on Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sat by an open window, the scent of fresh-baked croissants mingling with the steam of a perfectly brewed tisane. His egg-shaped head, now silvered slightly at the temples, tilted as he gazed at the bustling street below, his magnificent mustache as pristine as ever. The room, a sanctuary of order and symmetry, was adorned with polished mahogany furniture, a ticking mantel clock, and a small shelf of mementos from his storied career. Among them, a silver cigarette case engraved with the Harrington crest, a gift from Lady Evelyn, gleamed softly, a quiet reminder of Crimson Court. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, sat opposite, his kind face lined with the gentle wear of years. A retired military man now settled in London, Hastings had joined Poirot for one of their occasional teas, a ritual that often turned to reminiscing about past cases. The fire crackled in the grate, casting a warm glow over the room, and a tray of delicate pastries sat untouched, as if the weight of memory demanded precedence. "Poirot, old chap," Hastings began, stirring his tea. "I was thinking of that affair at Crimson Court the other day. What a devilish business. 1925, wasn't it? That locked room, Clara Beaumont, the whole tangled web. It stuck with me, you know." Poirot's green eyes twinkled, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "Oui, mon ami." The crimson stabbed in his sealed study had been killed by Clara Beaumont, the governess whose family he had inadvertently ruined in a Parisian diplomatic blunder. Her meticulous plan, entering through an unlatched window, striking with her family's kriss, relatching with a magnet, and planting distractions like a poisoned dagger and a tampered bolt, had nearly baffled even Poirot. But the clues, torn silk, a faint footprint, a phonograph's whispers, had betrayed her, leading to her tearful confession and arrest. Hastings set down his cup, his brow furrowed. "What got me, Poirot, was the codicil. Sir Reginald leaving half his fortune to that children's charity, trying to atone for Clara's family and others like them. It was as if he knew his past would catch up." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "The human heart, mon ami. It carries its burdens in silence, but it seeks redemption. Sir Reginald, he was no saint, but his codicil, it was his final act of balance. The International Children's Aid Society, it has done much good with his gift, helping families displaced by diplomacy's errors. The codicil, discovered after Clara's arrest, had reshaped Crimson Court's legacy. Lady Evelyn had sold the estate, its crimson walls now home to a wealthy industrialist who filled its halls with laughter and new life. She had retreated to a quieter existence in London, her sapphire eyes no longer shadowed by grief. Victor Langford, the embezzling secretary, had repaid his debts and found work as a clerk, his nervous tic a thing of the past. Colonel Marcus Thorne's memoirs, published to modest acclaim, included a chapter on his friend Reginald, painting him as flawed but honorable. Dr. Julian Forbes, his affair with Lady Evelyn a faded memory, had expanded his village practice, earning respect for his charity work. Mr. Edwards, the butler, served a new master in Kent, his loyalty unwavering. Poirot rose, crossing to the window, his polished boots silent on the rug. Crimson Court. It was a microcosm of humanity. Greed, love, were silent. The red herrings, the poison tisane, the cigarette case, the secret passage. They were noise. But the little gray cells, they found the signal. Hastings chuckled. And that phonograph. Her voice arguing with Sir Reginald, caught by chance. You played it like a maestro, Poirot. A happy accident, Poirot admitted, but one that confirmed her presence. The human voice, it betrays even the cleverest disguise. They spoke of the suspects' fates, each finding a path beyond Crimson Court. Lady Evelyn, now a patron of the arts, had written to Poirot, thanking him for the clarity that freed her to move forward. Thorne's memoirs, though not a bestseller, had restored his pride. Langford's redemption, slow but steady, proved his resolve. Forbes's charity work echoed Sir Reginald's codicil, a quiet atonement. Edwards, ever the butler, sent Poirot a Christmas card each year, a formal note of gratitude. Poirot returned to his chair, setting the cigarette case on the table. This memento. It reminds me of Crimson Court's lesson. The heart, it builds walls. But the truth, it finds the door. Hastings leaned forward, his eyes bright. You've solved dozens of cases, Poirot, but this one, it's a classic. The locked room, the motives, that codicil, it's got everything. Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice warm. But the case, it is not the puzzle alone, it is the people. Sir Reginald, Clara, Lady Evelyn, they are the story, not the lock or the key. The mantel clock chimed, marking the hour. Outside, London bustled, its rhythm a contrast to the quiet of Poirot's flat. Hastings rose, adjusting his coat. Time for me to head off, old chap. Got a dinner with the wife. But this chat, it's been a treat, revisiting Crimson Court. Poirot bowed slightly. A pleasure, mon ami. The past, it teaches us, even as we move forward. Safe travels, and give my regards to Madame Hastings. As Hastings departed, Poirot lingered by the